welcome you back, Soulmates. And if you happen to just be joining us, we're going to take it back to today's top headlines. Two fire department emergency medical workers and a driver have now been fired following the beating death of Tyree Nichols. They joined the 5 Memphis police officers who have been charged with second-degree murder. The EMTs were called out to the scene due to a person pepper sprayed, but officials say instead of rendering aid, they failed to, quote, conduct an adequate patient assessment of Nichols. The fire chief says it was not a difficult decision to make since they all violated multiple department policies and protocols. Meanwhile, 2 more Memphis police officers are now under investigation after the deadly beating of Tyree Nichols. Police on Monday named one of the 2 officers, Preston Hemphill, who is white, and said he has been on administrative leave since the beginning of the investigation. Memphis police spokesperson Kimberly Elder declined to say whether Hemphill is being paid. He has not been charged, though, and he was never present at the second scene that escalated to the beating. And Hemphill has been cooperating with the investigation. Legal experts say that over time there could be more charges coming in this case. And a former Louisville police officer blamed for instigating a deadly shooting during the 2020 protests over the death of Breonna Taylor will not serve prison time. 30-year-old Katie R. Cruz pleaded guilty last year to 1 count of using excessive force during a curfew crackdown in 2020 that ended with the fatal shooting of restaurant owner David McAtee. The judge over the case called Cruz's actions incredibly dangerous and doubled her 1-year recommended probation period to 2 years. The judge says he was reluctant to allow Cruz to avoid prison time, but was told that the victim's family had given their blessing to the recommended sentence. And lastly, to St. Louis, where that city will pay nearly $5.2 million to settle claims by people who were arrested during a protest in 2017 over the acquittal of a police officer in the shooting death of a black man. Now, according to a proposed class action settlement filed last week, the city agreed to pay $4.91 million. That's about $58,500 per person to 84 people who were protesting in downtown St. Louis. The lawsuit claimed the protesters' rights were violated when they were caught in what you call a police kettle. That's when officers surrounded and then arrested everyone in that particular area. Now, 3 people who filed individual lawsuits settled from $85,000 each. Now, the city denied any wrongdoing as a part of that settlement. That settlement still has to be approved by a judge. Nick Quarterly, back to you.
Thanks, Courtney. Now off to Pennsylvania, where former Penn State professor Errol Henderson has settled a federal lawsuit that alleged racial discrimination from the PWI. Henderson, who is the first black tenured professor in Penn State's political science department, took aim at what he calls the university's, quote, embarrassing lack of diversity within the department, faculty, and its students. The longtime professor authored an op-ed titled Being Black at Penn State that was published by the Daily Collegian, the student newspaper, in 2019. He was disciplined after the university found he repeatedly named specific members of the department during faculty meetings when he raised issues of perceived racist actions. After a long battle, Henderson left the university effective December 31st to, quote, pursue other opportunities. University spokeswoman Lisa Powers wrote in an email, terms of the settlement between Professor Henderson and the university were not released.
And in the latest developments in denying Black history as American history, Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye has been pulled from high school libraries in Florida County. The book is an award-winning novel about a Black girl who grew up after the Great Depression and part of a body of work that won Morrison the Nobel Peace Prize for Literature back in 1993. Florida Board Chairperson Lisa Kane said, until the state changes the law, we're going to continue to struggle with these types of decisions. And I can feel the heat. I can feel feel the heat next to my partner here, standing next to my partner. First of all, I know that from personal conversation and conversations here at the news desk, you absolutely adore Toni Morrison and her body of work. And then you've been heated from day one ever since, you know, there's been this argument about our history and the denial of it being a part of curriculums across the country. My argument is, you know, the argument that our history is somehow being denied as being a part of American history. I think our history might be a little intimidating because, you know, if we really take a deep dive and really remember and circle back around to what we've always been as a culture, which are great, innovative, smart, savvy people, I think that energy that would come from that pride, that would maybe be threatening to others. I don't know.
Yeah.
But our history is definitely American history, and I'm just not quite understanding the pushback. I think it might be some kind of threat.
Well, I mean, this is really about erasure. Mm-hmm. This is about erasing the contributions of luminaries like Toni Morrison, mm-hmm. like James Baldwin, the contributions of artists and authors and leaders mm-hmm. across industries. And, this should not just infuriate Black Americans, but this should infuriate, to your point, all Americans, mm-hmm. because mm-hmm. it's the body of work of people like Toni Morrison, that have given us language to use to describe our history, to talk about our experiences, to celebrate one another. One of the things that Toni Morrison said when she was living, is that when you go into a bookstore and you can't quite find a book that you relate to, then maybe it's time for you to write that story, right? Mm-hmm. And that's certainly what she did throughout her life and career. And to see folks sort of politicize this and make an effort to erase her from the history books. I mean, I just think about being an honors English student in mm-hmm. high school, mm-hmm. and what a gift it was to be able to learn about Toni Morrison, and more importantly, to read her work, mm-hmm. And to learn about those characters, and to interrogate some of the questions that are a part of all of our history. And so this is not the latest book. I'm sure there will be more, but encourage people to teach Black history wherever you are, to read banned books, right? And don't be afraid, because I think that's what these efforts are intending to do, is make people afraid, and we can't be afraid of our history and to celebrate our people. Moving along, you can now add one more gymnastics team to the HBCU roster. This summer, Talladega College in Alabama will launch a women's gymnastics team, joining Fisk University as the only two HBCUs in the nation with gymnastics programs. The formation of the Talladega team came with the help of Brown Girls Do Gymnastics, an advocacy group that supports athletes from Black and brown communities that helped start Fisk's program.
And the nation's first Black-owned McDonald's franchise is set to return just in time for Black History Month. The Chicago location opened its doors back in 1968 following the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., while protests erupted across the city. Now, the restaurant was initially franchised by Herman Petty, a Chicago change agent who passed away back in 2009. Now, Yolanda Travis is carrying on the legacy as a new owner and operator of the McDonald's located at 65th and Stony Island in Chicago's Woodlawn neighborhood. I'm very familiar with the area. Now, the updated McDonald's will offer modernized food ordering technology and a polished new look. I'm excited about that.
Well, the folks at Albany State weren't so excited about this. That's why Albany State University head football coach Quinn Gray Sr. is apologizing for recruiting Marcus Stokes, the white football player who used the N-word. You remember him? Yeah, Stokes was originally dropped from the University of Florida after a video surfaced of him using the N-word while singing along to a hip-hop song. He issued an apology but lost his scholarship. Last week, Stokes revealed that he was recruited to play at Albany State University for the Golden Rams. After some backlash, the HBCU has changed its mind. In a release statement, Coach Gray explained, quote, I was trying to help a student get back in competition, and in my haste, I did not consider the impact the decision would have on all of you.
Ooh.
Now, Courtney, remember we brought the story to our soulmates last week. This is an update to that story. We had a little bit of a banter about that, and we had different theories as to what this was all about.
Yeah.
But apparently, the higher-ups at that HBCU and the students weren't having it.
And just a little, backstory. This young man was offered a Division I scholarship, which tells me he was pretty decent as a quarterback. I don't know if it was Twitter or Snapchat or whatever, but he was mouthing the lyrics to a song that included the N-word, which brought about the debate, since he didn't, use it at someone of color. It was a part of, a song. We've talked about hip hop and rap music and lyrics, and, if they're recited by someone outside of the culture, is it offensive? I know maybe sometimes the younger generation don't, view or see the N-word as such an issue as maybe older generations have. So there's that. But he did, get that scholarship snatched because, I think the way it's just traditionally looked at, you just can't use it. And this HBU said, oh, yeah, well, we'll take them. And then I think they thought about it. And here's where we are with this particular story. I kind of thought it was a bad idea, just aesthetically. It just didn't look too well. And so somebody woke up, smelled the coffee, and realized that it wasn't a good look from jump to offer him this scholarship. But I hear that he's got another scholarship, offer on the table as well. So I think he'll be fine. Lesson learned, maybe?
Lesson learned for a lot of folks, including the coach over at Albany State, who probably just got ahead of administration and got ahead of the student body. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you need to really socialize, before you go public offering people things. Yeah. And so hopefully the coach learned his lesson there. But I'm sure this young man will eventually be okay.
I'm sure he'll be just fine.
Everybody should have a chance at redemption, and that's especially if they understand what they did.
And big ups to everybody on 65th and Stony Island in the Chi, South Side, baby, Woodline.
All right, South Side.
That's a good look.
Up next, major charges are being dropped against R. Kelly.
Speaking of Chicago, plus biopic is in the works. We'll tell you from whom and who will be playing the iconic music star when we return. You're watching Fox Soul's Black Report.